with emotion. And I actually had to walk out of the room. So it was just too much for me to handle.
So do you blame Dr. Murray for your brother's death?
Yes, I do. He is the one that was administering the drug, as from what I do know. So.
One person I believe in Hollywood who people conspired to actually take down because he had too much power, and I believe that person was Michael Jackson. The reason I believe that is because you can look into the story. Paul McCartney and Michael used to be real cool. Paul was telling Michael, like, yo, you got to get your business together. You got to get your business right. Michael ended up getting so big that he bought the Beatles publishing. The Beatles publishing was worth so much that literally Sony gave Michael Jackson half of their publishing company just to own the Beatles catalog. Imagine how powerful a black man is when he owns a majority of the music industry's publishing. In some cases, was even giving publishing back to some of the artists. He gave Little Richard his publishing back. I don't know how many people he did that to, but he gave Little Richard his publishing back. I believe that Michael Jackson had too much power in the music industry, had too much control over the most valuable asset in music, which is people's publishing, and I believe they had to take him out because of it.
Mike Y, it looks like Janet Jackson, Ms. Jackson if you're nasty, just lit the whole industry on fire with a bombshell nobody saw coming. She's pointing her finger straight at Jay-Z, saying he wasn't just competing with her brother Michael, he was plotting against him. Janet claims this wasn't just some harmless rivalry. Nope. She's hinting that Jay was allegedly moving chess pieces behind the scenes, cutting shady deals, and blocking Michael at every corner. That's a wild accusation. Fans are buzzing that this could explain the mysterious power plays, the secret meetings, and the sudden moves that left Michael standing alone at the peak of his career. And get this, Janet's timing makes her words even more explosive. People are saying these claims could be the very thing that shakes Jay-Z's throne as the so-called king of Hollywood. The whispers are now a full-on storm, and Janet just threw gasoline right on it. She's not buying the official story about Michael's passing. Not one bit.
You know, we always hear the conspiracy theories, like, you know, they be like, oh, Bill Cosby was trying to buy NBC.
Yeah.
Michael's the only person I believe they really tried to railroad like that because of what he did with the publishing in the music industry.
He talked about it all the time. He talked about it all the time. One thing I will say is that in the studio, he would always talk about how he lived in a certain fear. And I used to always try to reel him in a direction like, yo, you only supposed to fear God. Man shouldn't have you feeling like that. No man should have you living in that space. But he lived in that space a lot because he felt like he had something that was so valuable, which he did. He had something so valuable that people wanted.
He owned like half of Sony ATV's publishing, right?
Yeah, I think what people have confused, I'm glad you said that way, because I think people have confused the narrative. People for so long have said, Michael owned the Beatles catalog.
I've heard that.
No, Michael owned Sony ATV.
That's right.
Which is Babyface, Mariah, the Beatles.
Beyonce.
Probably some of my catalog was in there.
Janet is flat out making it clear that the media wasn't the only enemy her brother was facing. She's pointing to gaps, contradictions, and straight-up shady connections surrounding Michael's final days. And according to her, all roads lead to something way bigger than anyone imagined. And at the center of it all, she's hinting loud and clear. Jay-Z! And let's not forget his longtime ally, Diddy. Yay, Diddy's name pops up in everything, but let's hit rewind real quick. Michael Jackson died on June 25th, 2009 from a propofol overdose. May he rest in peace. That dangerous drug was illegally given to him by his personal doctor, Conrad Murray. And here's where things get shady. When Michael collapsed, Murray didn't even call 911 right away. Instead, reports say he picked up the phone and dialed a man named Vahe Muhammad. Now, Vahe wasn't a doctor, he wasn't even medical staff, he was Diddy's bodyguard. And the street's been whispering for years that Vahe wasn't just some regular bodyguard, he was the fixer, the cleanup man you called when something messy went down in the industry. So why was he the first call instead of an ambulance? Fans are side-eyeing that detail heavy, wondering what really happened in Michael's final moments. But here's the burning question. Why would Jay-Z and Diddy even want Michael Jackson out the way? According to Janet, it all boiled down to power and money. Michael wasn't just the king of pop, he was the king of Hollywood at that time. Untouchable. Prince, the purple one himself, came close. But Jay-Z, he wasn't even playing on Michael's level. And people forget, Michael wasn't only an artist, he was a straight-up businessman. He was sitting on assets so massive they shook the music industry to its core. He owned the Sony/ATV publishing catalog, worth around $250 million back then. That catalog didn't just make him rich, it gave him power over some of the biggest names in music. Producer Rodney Jerkins, aka Darkchild, once admitted Michael confided in him, saying he lived in constant fear because of that catalog. He knew everyone around him wanted what he had, and turns out that fear wasn't paranoia. It was reality. Janet claims that catalog made him a target, and when Darkchild got pressed on whether those legal cases against Michael were connected to his industry power, he didn't dodge. He hinted straight up that those accusations weren't just random scandals, they were strategic moves. These accusations weren't random, they were part of a much bigger plan. Allegedly, the media's obsession with painting Michael as a predator came from people way up at the top. Darkchild made it clear none of it added up. He straight up said it was crazy that Michael was ever accused, and he spoke with conviction because he never believed any of it. Why? Because he was around Michael all the time. He saw how Michael lived, who he surrounded himself with, and what kind of man he really was. He looked at the man in the mirror and saw the truth. From his view, those accusations weren't facts. They were weapons used to tear him down. Darkchild spent years defending Michael because he knew the real story. And it wasn't just about loyalty. He was surrounded by people who trusted Michael, people who believed in him. But even with all that, he often found himself standing alone against the storm. Now here's where it gets strange. Darkchild remembered that during that period, Michael was trying to stay upbeat. He was planning big summer jams, trying to bring the joy back. But according to insiders, everything shifted after he linked up with Jay-Z for that summer jam in 2001. That wasn't just another collab. Insiders claim it was the moment Jay started weaving himself deeper into Michael's world. And some even whisper Jay-Z had been working his way into Michael's circle long before that, as far back as 1993. Rumor has it, he got help from LaToya Jackson's ex-husband, Jack Gordon, to sneak his way closer. From that moment, Michael's inner circle was never the same again. Around that exact time, LaToya suddenly dropped a bombshell, saying Michael had written checks to families of young boys between 9 and 13. That statement rocked the world and fed the ugly allegations. But later, LaToya backtracked, claiming she had only said it because her ex-husband Jack Gordon forced her to, with reports calling him manipulative and controlling. But according to insiders, this wasn't just some messy family drama. Allegedly, the whole thing was being orchestrated behind the curtain by none other than Jay-Z and Diddy. They had the power, the reach, and the motive to flip Michael's entire world upside down. And here's the kicker. The timing of these bombshell statements wasn't random at all. Remember when Jaguar Wright came out and said Diddy might be horrible, but Jay-Z is way worse? Well, that's starting to look less like wild gossip and more like a chilling warning. Think about it. How is it that the two biggest icons of their time, Prince and Michael Jackson, were dodging allegations left and right, but Jay-Z and Diddy managed to stay squeaky clean? Not only were they untouched, they were even celebrated as moguls, helping their fellow black men climb the ladder. That narrative looked polished for the cameras, but behind the scenes, the whispers suggest something way darker. Jaguar's claims hit different now, because if Prince and MJ were both constantly under attack, but Jay and Diddy somehow stayed out the line of fire, doesn't that feel calculated? Insiders are hinting that it wasn't luck at all, it was strategy. The story painted to the public made Jay-Z and Diddy look like powerful role models, while the real play, if you follow what insiders whisper, was much colder. It's almost like the deck was stacked, and the industry's biggest threats were being picked off one by one, while the true orchestrators walked away spotless. Michael Jackson wasn't afraid to speak up. He went public and blasted Tommy Mottola, the powerful CEO of Sony Records at the time. Michael accused him of racism and shady business tactics, even saying Mottola was spreading conspiracies about him and other black artists just to line his pockets. That's wild. And doesn't that sound familiar? Think about how Jay-Z hyped up Jaguar Wright only to drop her cold, or how Diddy allegedly stirred up rumors about Biggie and others whenever they tried to break free. That same twisted pattern starts looking eerily familiar when you compare it to what Michael faced. Not long after, Michael revealed Sony was furious with him for wanting out of the label. Even though he owned 50% of Sony's publishing catalog, a jaw-dropping amount of power, the company wanted him to bow down and play by their rules. But Michael refused to stay quiet about their intimidation games. And that's when the tension hit a dangerous level. According to insiders, this was the moment Jay-Z and Diddy allegedly tightened their grip. Behind the scenes, they were moving pieces, cutting deals, and working overtime to isolate Michael while controlling the story being told about him. Michael wanted out. He was ready to be a free agent. But here's the whisper nobody wants to say out loud. Allegedly, Jay-Z played a role in the conspiracy against Michael because he was promised something massive in return. Keep watching, because what comes next is flat out insane. Remember when I mentioned Jack Gordon? Well, here's where it gets dark, real dark. Gordon reportedly forced a marriage with LaToya Jackson just so he could gain access to her life, and ultimately to Michael Jackson himself. According to Janet, her sister wasn't just stuck in a bad marriage. She was being manipulated, brainwashed, and fed lies. Gordon allegedly convinced LaToya that her very own family was plotting to kidnap her. And the audacity didn't stop there. Gordon is said to have staged a whole press conference where LaToya claimed she had proof of Michael's alleged activities, all at his direction. Then she demanded $500,000 from whoever would pay the most for that so-called evidence. Can you believe that? Selling out your own brother for $500,000? If true, that's cold-blooded. But here's the truth that came out later. LaToya never had any proof. She revealed she had been forced into making those statements by Gordon. Not long after, she divorced him and exposed the terrifying extent of his abuse. She said Gordon beat her with household items, isolated her from her family, and controlled every single move she made. So these rumors and scandals weren't random at all. They were part of what insiders say was a carefully calculated plot to destroy Michael's image and strip away his assets.
They want it back.
You think they threw all those cases at Michael because they wanted it back?
I think it could have had something to do with it. I'm not going to say exactly that, but it could have had something to do with it. But I believe none of it because I was around Mike all the time and I knew the kind of person he was. So I'm like, they really trying to kill his character.
Yeah, I don't believe
And
it.
he would say it, like, he'd be like, they just can't stand that I'm the greatest. He would literally say that.
And who do the whispers keep circling back to as the masterminds pulling strings behind it all? None other than Jay-Z and his close ally, Diddy. And now, with these old stories resurfacing right around the time of Diddy's recent arrest and the explosive allegations made against him by Cassie and others, it's looking way too suspicious. More and more hidden truths keep bubbling up, and with every new revelation, another can of worms bursts wide open. Fans are starting to connect the dots in ways that make this alleged plot look even more sinister. And the deeper it goes, the clearer it becomes that we may never fully uncover the extent of Diddy's alleged treachery and crimes. Now, remember Diddy's bodyguard, Fahim Muhammad? The same man Conrad Murray reportedly called when Michael's pulse was fading fast? Well, turns out there may have been way more to his role than just bodyguard. During the time Diddy seemed untouchable, people are now saying Fahim was the one doing the dirty work behind the scenes. A fixer, a cleaner, the man who made problems disappear. Similar to what Gene Deal later admitted to doing. And here's where it gets even darker. In the lawsuit filed by Lil Rod against Diddy, there were multiple claims hinting that Fahim played a huge role in shielding Diddy from legal consequences. Piece by piece, this paints a picture of a whole network working in silence to protect the biggest names in the industry, while taking down anyone who stood in their way. But here's a chilling little detail most people missed. Fahim had only just started working as Michael's head of security about 10 months before Michael's death. Before that, there's barely any record of him being part of Michael's circle at all. It's almost like he was suddenly planted there, without Michael even realizing what was happening. And now comes one of the most heartbreaking details. Janet revealed that the reason she didn't spend much time with her brother in the weeks before his passing wasn't by choice. It was because she simply wasn't allowed.
They steal, they cheat, they do whatever they can, especially the black artists. Sony, Tommy Mottola Tommy Mottola is the president of the record division. He is a mean, he's a racist, and he's very, very, very devilish.
Michael was working nonstop until 2009. But when he died, not even his family was around him. The only people present? Fahim Muhammad and Dr. Conrad Murray. When you connect the dots, it starts looking less like chance and more like a tightly controlled circle, shutting out outsiders and even family at the most critical moments. And come on, it can't just be a coincidence that one of the last people to see Michael alive was deeply connected to both Diddy and Jay-Z, with all their alleged crimes swirling in the background. It seems like the people who wanted Michael out the way made sure he was isolated, keeping his family at a distance until it was far too late. Janet said the very last time she saw her brother was just 2 days before her birthday, about a month before he passed. So when the news hit that Michael had been rushed to the hospital, Janet was at home, powerless, unable to be with him in those final moments. The more you look at it, the more every move around Michael feels carefully orchestrated to keep him completely alone when it mattered the most. And here's the chilling part. Michael's family wasn't even properly informed about how serious things were. Janet recalled that the next thing she knew, her brother was already gone. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. The lack of communication, the isolation, and the eerie timing all raise heavy questions about who was really pulling the strings in those final hours. Another shocking bombshell Janet dropped was how the people who forced their way into Michael's inner circle allegedly made him dependent on pills. Every single time the family tried to step in, Conrad Murray would brush them off, insisting he knew what he was doing and that Michael didn't need anyone else's input. Janet revealed that Michael understood his family's interventions came from love, but he felt powerless to fight back. And here's the heartbreaking part. It wasn't just LaToya who was vulnerable to manipulation. Janet hinted that Michael himself was being brainwashed. With Conrad Murray constantly repeating that nothing was wrong, Michael slowly slipped into denial. According to Janet, her brother refused to accept that his life was spiraling out of control because the people surrounding him had carefully convinced him that everything was normal. The mix of isolation and manipulation blinded him to the danger until it was already too late. Janet also made it crystal clear she fully blames Conrad Murray for Michael's death. But she didn't stop there. She hinted at something even bigger lurking in the shadows. She said the same people controlling Michael's health were also controlling his public appearances. And this might explain why his looks seemed to change so drastically every time he showed up in public. Fans even began speculating that Michael was being forced into humiliation rituals meant to break him down, because by that point, he no longer had the freedom to speak up for himself. In his final years, Michael was kept hooked on pills, cut off from his family, and stripped of control over his own money.
History, where were you when you heard?
I was at home in New York. I was at my house in New York. You know, another day, another morning. And I get a call, headed to the hospital.
And you headed to the airport?
Not at that very moment. I didn't know the severity of it. No one knew. I can't remember exactly who I wound up calling back to see how things were going, and that's when they told me he had passed.
He had passed.
Yes.
Yeah.
Janet may have put the blame squarely on Conrad Murray, but LaToya took it a step further. When she was asked if Murray was responsible for Michael's death, she didn't hold back. She said she believed Murray was nothing more than a fall guy, part of a much bigger, carefully orchestrated plot against her brother. That chilling idea makes the whole story even darker and way more shocking. Michael himself had reportedly warned his sisters over and over again that he was being followed, that people were plotting against him, and that his every move was being watched. Given the level of fame he carried and the millions he pulled in wherever he went, it's no surprise he felt unsafe. But the intensity of those warnings? That suggested something way more sinister than just obsessive fans. Remember, this was a man who couldn't even walk into a store without it turning into a riot. Michael had to create fake shopping experiences just to feel normal, just to pretend he was invisible in public. So yes, being followed wasn't unusual for him, but what made it terrifying was that in his final days, he wasn't just talking about fame or paparazzi. He was warning his own family that someone was tracking his every step. At the end of the day, everything still circled back to that powerful catalog. Michael even told LaToya that he had developed a love-hate relationship with it, because as much as it gave him power, it also put a target on his back. And who stood to gain the most from his downfall? Coincidentally, Diddy's Bad Boy Records and Jay-Z's Rockefeller Records, both founded right around the same time ugly rumors about Michael being a predator started circulating. And if you think that's just coincidence, wait until you hear this. Remember how I mentioned Jay-Z was allegedly promised something in return for spreading conspiracies and controlling media narratives? Well, look at what lined up. Michael Jackson passed on June 25th, 2009, and just 5 days later, Jay-Z's Roc Nation suddenly announced a major distribution deal with Sony Records. Suspicious timing, right? It makes you wonder if this is how the game was being played with black music legends taken down while others rose higher. LaToya also revealed another chilling detail. After she was forced to lie about Michael, her brother confided in her that people had infiltrated his inner circle with the intention of ending his life. And LaToya firmly believes Michael was taken out. She's not the only one. His daughter Paris Jackson has echoed the same fears.
It may have been murdered. Do you still think that?
Absolutely.
Why?
Absolutely.
Why are you so
I would
sure?
never, ever think differently. Because first of all, Michael told me that they were going to murder him. He was afraid. He was afraid
who
for
was
his
going
life.
to murder him?
The people that were involved in his life, the people that were controlling him. This book, Starting Over, is about my life. And it's about Michael's life. It's the parallel between the two of our lives. We share that same life where people come into your life, wiggle their way in, control you, manipulate, control your funds, your finances, everything that you have, and you must do what they tell you to do. And that's what Michael was going through. And he knew that everything that was happening to him was not kosher, it wasn't right, and it disturbed him greatly. And he kept saying it over and over and over again. Yes, Dr. Murray was the fall guy, but it's more to it than just that. He named names. He told me people. He told me to be careful of this one and that one. And in the beginning, I didn't, it's not that I didn't believe him.
Who were the people that he was saying?
People that surrounded themselves around him, people that worked with him, people that were with him the last days.
Any specific names?
Michael wasn't capable of doing these shows that he was supposed to do. Michael only agreed to do 10, and it's because they had him on such a tight rope.
In her book, LaToya revealed that Paris said the last time she saw her father, he broke down in tears, constantly saying he was freezing and begging for fire to warm him. Even worse, Paris claimed the family was deliberately kept in the dark. Phones were cut off, communication was blocked, and nobody on the inside would tell them what was really happening. Allegedly, the people responsible for cutting Michael off from his own family included Conrad Murray and Fahim Muhammad. And now, years later, Paris Jackson has spoken out, saying she still hopes one day she'll finally get answers about the people who took her father from her far too soon. If Janet, LaToya, and Paris all keep insisting that something was off, that this was a setup, then maybe it's time we stop calling it coincidence and start calling it what it looks like. Because looking at all the facts surrounding the passing of the King of Pop, one thing is clear: something went seriously wrong. Conrad Murray may have taken the public blame, but even his role looks like that of a fall guy, shielding a bigger, darker machine at work. And if these recent revelations are even halfway true, it's only a matter of time before the full truth finally explodes into the light. Janet Jackson has now pulled back the curtain on what could be one of the biggest conspiracies in music history. With Jay-Z, Diddy, the media, and a whole hidden network allegedly moving in the shadows, isolating Michael, controlling his life, and even manipulating those closest to him. Whether you believe it or not, the pieces line up in ways too sharp to ignore. Michael Jackson may have left this world, but the questions around how and why are far from over. And with Janet, LaToya, and Paris all speaking out now, it feels like the clock is ticking before even more shocking truths come to the surface. So tell me, do you think Michael was set up, or is it all just speculation? Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash that subscribe button, like, and share this video, because the next revelations could blow the roof off everything we thought we knew. The king of pop deserves answers, and the world deserves the truth.